Hello, welcome. You're watching I24 News, coming to you live from Tel Aviv. The top stories this hour. Israel defends its operation in Rafah. Amid further signs, the operation is putting ties with Egypt under strain. Morocco's former Prime Minister meets with the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Doha. And Israel moves from the sorrow of Memorial Day to the joy of Independence Day in a ceremony tonight in Jerusalem. Those are the top stories this hour, and several IDF soldiers have been seriously wounded in a Hamas mortar attack in Gaza, while the Air Force hit more than 120 targets across the Strip this Monday. This as diplomatic pressure mounts on Israel not to expand its operation in Rafah, but Israel insists it must operate in the southernmost city of the Strip and says hundreds of thousands of civilians have already moved to safety. Our Bianca Zanini has the latest.
As the nation of Israel comes to a halt, marking Memorial Day in honor of the country's fallen soldiers and victims of terror, the concept of peace seems as elusive as ever in the region. Ongoing ceasefire negotiations with Hamas are seemingly at a standstill, the terror group insisting on a permanent ceasefire to end the current fighting in Gaza, and Israel demanding the release of over 130 hostages still held in Gaza. So the war in the Strip continues, as Israel prepares to expand its military operation in the city of Rafah, a move that threatens to further isolate the Jewish state to the rest of the Middle East and the world.
There is an international consensus regarding the rejection to expanding the scope of the military operations in Rafah, or the operation altogether. There has always been international consensus against the entrance into Rafah, for its dire consequences on the Palestinian civilians who are staying in this area.
Egyptian officials now reportedly warning that the country's peace treaty with Israel, a long-standing cornerstone of regional stability, is at risk if Israel goes ahead with a major ground operation in Rafah, according to the Associated Press. Egypt also announced it will support South Africa's current lawsuit in the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last week doubling down on his government's decision.
If we have to stand alone, we will stand alone. I already said that if we have to, we will fight tooth and nail.
This in direct response to U.S. President Joe Biden's starkest threat to Israel so far. Biden saying he will halt supply of offensive weapons that Israel could use in Rafah, and reminding the Israelis that there is a red line. Meanwhile, Britain's Foreign Secretary David Cameron doubling down on the country's support for its allies, saying he will not halt British arms to Israel.
There was a brutal attack by Iran on Israel, including 140 cruise missiles. So it's not sort of, tiny drones, huge cruise missiles blasting into Israel, and I think it would have sent entirely the wrong message. It would have been a very unwise move. So, as we stand here today, I think there is a better answer, which is, Hamas must take the hostage deal. You get the pause in the fighting. You build a ceasefire out of that. But I think actually just to simply announce today we're going to change our whole approach to arms exports rather than go through our careful process, it would strengthen Hamas, it would make a hostage deal less likely. I don't think it would be the right approach.
The Biden administration insisting that entering Rafah is not the way to destroy Hamas and reach peace, and demanding that Israel have a plan for post-war Gaza.
Israel's on the trajectory potentially to inherit an insurgency with many armed Hamas left, or if it leaves, a vacuum filled by chaos, filled by anarchy, and probably refilled by Hamas. We've been talking to them about a much better way of getting an enduring result, enduring security, both in Gaza itself and much more broadly in the region.
In Israel, the war looming large over Memorial Day, and the question of what happens next.
Well, for the very latest on the situation in Gaza, we can go to the south of Israel and our correspondent Zach Anders for you now. And Zach, two major reports coming out of Gaza today. The first, that 5 Israeli troops have been seriously hit. And secondly, we're hearing about a UN truck that may potentially have been hit in an IDF strike. Could you bring us up to date with both of those?
Sure thing. What we're seeing right now, 2 soldiers seriously wounded in the Rafah area. This is at some point earlier today. We don't have an exact readout on the time or many details about how this happened. It's also not the only injuries. Another 6 troops moderately injured in the same incident, being described as an incident. We don't know yet. Well, we don't have official confirmation at this point whether or not this was some sort of ground engagement or a rocket attack. It also says that 2 defense contractors, I'm presuming civilians based on this readout, were also lightly wounded. And considering that this is in and around the Rafah area, it's interesting to note civilian contractors working in the area still working to collect some of the details regarding this specific event. Again, 2 seriously wounded, 2 IDF soldiers seriously wounded and taken for immediate evac. What we're seeing elsewhere with this UN vehicle, the sedan that has bullet holes down the right side near the rear, one of the windows, a couple of bullet holes through it. We don't have official word from the United Nations, but Palestinian reports saying the driver was killed and one of the UN workers inside wounded by this event. We don't have the nationalities for either. One of the things that we're working to get some more details on, this news breaking about 3 hours ago here. We also just had alarms in just north of the Gaza Strip about 10 minutes ago. We're still working to put together, don't see any reports, immediate reports of damage or casualties from this alarm. But once again, another rocket fire coming out of the Gaza Strip and reaching into the north. This area, Yad Mordecai, of course, just right over the border. But again, Hamas's capabilities to fire these rockets.
And Zach, just to go to what the Defence Minister was saying earlier today, Yoav Gallant, he was defending the IDF operation in Rafah, wasn't he, saying that it is a precise mission. He also spoke about the number of civilians who have taken heed of those evacuation orders and have left the city. Just give us a sense of how many civilians are leaving Rafah right now.
Well, the UN and the IDF numbers match. They say 360,000 people have evacuated under this latest notice that came down on Sunday, the expanded evacuation order. Remember, these are set into zones. The IDF has fragmented the Gaza Strip into numbered, boundaried areas, telling people where to leave, which zone to flee to. And that expansion, the latest expansion, does cover a considerable chunk of the east side, the eastern half of Rafah City. That does not mean that ground forces have moved into this area. We do not have confirmation or reports that they have stretched into the west, deep into this evacuation zone. That's not to say that we haven't seen some images of ground forces moving along the Salah al-Din road, which runs from the Rafah crossing to the north. There's a couple of roads that split off to the west into this evacuation zone where we have seen tanks move into these areas, maybe a few blocks. But we don't have confirmation that this is an effort by the IDF, and we don't see anything that indicates that this is an effort by the IDF to control this area. And it does speak to what Defense Minister Gallant has been saying, that this was they have been running raid-like operations and returning to their lines that they hold. Right now, what we can say, the Salah al-Din road is the marker, the main point of interest, if you will, where we know the IDF forces have ground control, and everything to the east of that does appear to be under a stabilized situation, that the IDF has a strong showing of ground forces, a considerable deployment of armor, tanks in this area. But again, our focus and presumably the White House as well on everything west. Considering the President Biden's red line statement saying don't go into the population center of Rafah. Well, this is a very populous area of Rafah. It's not the heart of the city, but then again, this is a very different urban environment. It's long and skinny. It runs right up against the Egyptian border. With homes and buildings all along this 7-mile long border between Egypt and the Gaza border.
OK, Zach, thank you very much. Zach Andrews there down in the south of Israel. Well, with me in the studio this hour, Dr. Michael Oren is the former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Thank you for being with us, Ambassador. And the IDF pushing bit by bit into Rafah. As we just heard, the US has given Israel a warning: do not go into those population centres. That is a critical red line. Most recently, we had Secretary Blinken on the phone to Defence Minister Gallant last night. I mean, how much more pressure do you think the US will put on Israel here?
A lot, Laura. There are different ways of pressure. It starts with the pressure of denying or delaying the supply of vital munitions to Israel. And when we talk about these bombs, yes, they are heavy bombs, but if you're going to even have a commando raid into Gaza, you've got to put down an artillery barrage around the commando raid, or the commandos get killed. I don't know what movies some of these people have been watching. I think the commandos just march into a neighborhood and conduct a raid. It doesn't work like that. And if you remember, when we did manage to secure the release of 2 of the hostages, it involved a pretty heavy bombardment around the area of operation in order to keep our commandos and those hostages safe. So that's one aspect. A report in the Washington Post the other day that says that the administration was withholding vital intelligence information about the whereabouts of Hamas leaders, and one has to assume if they know where the Hamas leaders are, they know where the hostages are. They're withholding it from Israel as sort of a leverage to keep Israel from entering Rafah. And there are other sources of leverage.
And you've written a tweet about that, which has gone pretty viral. You, former ambassador to the United States, you have written, is this administration still an ally to Israel?
To me, that was actually unthinkable. It was unthinkable that they withhold information about people who are determined to kill us, who have killed already some 1,400, 1,500 Israelis who are holding 130 hostages now for 220 days, and they're our allies. So you got to ask, okay, what kind of ally would do something like that, even though they're concerned about Rafah? Okay, so it's true. I was not very happy with that. But there are other points of leverage. A potential International Criminal Court decision to issue arrest warrants against the Prime Minister, against other ministers, against military leaders. The United States could step in and help defend that. A move by the Palestinian Authority in the General Assembly and the Security Council to get unilaterally declared Palestinian state, which would create a legal conflict for Israel, where the United States will keep on opposing it. There are many different levers that the United States can pull, but I don't think any of them, at the end of the day, are going to be effective in stopping what the Israeli government, the Israeli military, and I think the vast majority of Israelis deeply believe is an essential operation, both for our security and probably at this point the only way to release those hostages.
So is the Biden administration still an ally of Israel, in your view? Sometimes
it acts like an ally, and sometimes, frankly, it doesn't. I mean, does an ally withhold vital ammunition at the middle of a war? The UN came out with a report yesterday that the claim of so many thousands, tens of thousands of women and children have been killed by Israeli fire in Gaza has been grossly exaggerated. It's 50% less. At least.
The UN, just to be clear, the UN has cut its own death toll figures of civilians, of women and children, by 50%.
Now, we've had the President, the Secretary of State come out again and again saying Israel can't kill another 32,000 or 34,000 Gazans. Israel is killing too many women and children. Israel is dehumanizing Palestinians. To hear anybody apologizing? I mean it. Anybody say, gee, we're sorry for delegitimizing Israel and the IDF, and by the way, contributing to anti-Semitism in the United States, and particularly on campuses, because what's the claim? The claim that Israel is dehumanizing and Palestinians are committing war crimes. So no one's walking this back. And to me, that type of activity is not consonant with an ally. On the other hand, the administration does many things that an ally does do. It's providing us with massive aid, most recently about $15 billion in aid. It's unprecedented. It is guarding our skies against hundreds of Iranian missiles, helping to guard our skies. It is blocking, for the time being, those unilateral moves by the Palestinians in the UN. So it's a mixed bag. And if you listen to Secretary of State Blinken's interview on television last night, he said, well, the State Department has cleared Israel of violating international humanitarian law and its use of American munitions, but we have concerns. And so it's two different voices, and even the point we have a spokesman for the National Security Council.
That was the State Department report, which says we don't have evidence that Israel is breaking international law. But
we're saying it does anyway.
It might be.
But we're saying it does anyway. You have John Kirby, the spokesman for the National Security Council, who's very pro-Israel, but you have spokesmen for other branches of the government who are very critical of Israel. So, listen, I understand there's an election going on, and you've got different constituencies and they're concerned, but it's very important, I think, for the leader of the free world, a superpower, and our ultimate ally to speak with one voice. That doesn't mean there can't be criticism. We've made many mistakes in this war, and it's not we're above criticism, but an ally stands by its allies in spite of mistakes made in war, and lets the world know it.
Okay. Dr. Michael Oren, for now, thank you very much indeed. Let's talk about another ally, because Israel's relationship with Egypt has come under further strain a day after Cairo said it would join South Africa's case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. Egypt was the first Arab country to recognise and have peace with Israel. Egyptian security officials today cancelled meetings with Israeli counterparts despite years of intelligence and security cooperation. Egypt has repeatedly warned Israel against going into Rafah. Well, to talk more about that, I'm joined by Hossein Kamel Haredi, former assistant to Egypt's foreign minister. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, sir. And tell me, first of all, then, is Egypt prepared to sever what the foreign minister, Sami Shukri, just yesterday called the strategic relationship with Israel over an IDF offensive in Rafah?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure to qualify Egyptian-Israeli relations as strategic relationship. This is a gross over exaggeration on the part of our foreign minister. We have friendly relations. We have signed a peace agreement with Israel, and that's it. We cannot be in a strategic partnership with Israel for the simple reason we have it clear on the ground in Gaza and in the West Bank. We can never be a strategic ally as long as Israel is occupying the West Bank and as long as Israel is waging this war, whatever the reasons that the Israeli government provides for this 8 months war. I'm sorry, I cannot accept the description of Egyptian-Israeli relations as strategic relationship. That's one. The second thing that, of course, what Egypt did yesterday was just to send a message to both Israel and the United States that enough is enough. This war has been going on for 8 months now. It's on our borders. And now the Israelis are on our borders with their tanks, with their artillery, and with their air bombarding of some targets in Rafah. And God only knows how long the Israelis would stay in Rafah. They have complete control on the Palestinian side of the crossing, and in this way, Israel has really led to isolating the Gaza Strip from the outside world. In other words, Israel now controls the lives of more than 2 million Palestinian civilians. How long will Israel keep these crossings closed? That's an open question, and we in Egypt cannot, neither the government of Egypt nor the people of Egypt can live with this such atrocities in Gaza.
All right, just a couple of things then. On the crossings, as you rightly point out, Israel now controls the Gazan side of the Rafah crossing. Egypt has refused to cooperate with Israel when it comes to getting aid to the Palestinian civilians. Is Egypt not punishing the Gazan civilians unnecessarily in order to get a message and make its point to Israel?
Well, of course, it's a very delicate situation. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we are comfortable, but we cannot cope. We cannot accept the fact that Israel controls the Palestinian side of the Rafah crossing. We have always made our position clear that those who should govern Gaza, those who should govern the Palestinian side of the Rafah crossings, are the Palestinians themselves, particularly the National Palestinian Authority. Is Israel ready to cooperate with the Palestinians in running Gaza? Is Israel willing to withdraw its forces from Gaza?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but would the Palestinian Authority be able to take over now in Gaza while Hamas is still active and is still governing Gaza?
Well, I'm sure that the Palestinians themselves can work out an agreement, an arrangement of dealing with Gaza. Saying this, of course, dealing with Gaza, we have to speak in the medium term and in the long term. And I'm sure if Israel withdraws its forces from Gaza, I'm sure that Arab countries would help the Palestinian Authority manage the Gaza Strip and ensure security.
Would Egypt do that?
Once on the condition that Israel withdraws all its forces in Gaza, opens the crossings with Gaza, and then through the United Nations and with cooperation with the American administration, the European Union, we can come up with an arrangement to run Gaza Strip and to make sure that Israel won't be attacked once again from Gaza.
Okay, Hussein Kamel Haredi, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam.
Ambassador Michael Oren, you were listening to that. What is your reaction? Is Israel paying enough attention to the warnings coming from Cairo?
Well, I know Foreign Minister Shukri very well. We served together in Washington. He's a fine diplomat and a guarded man in his language, and I don't think he's opposed to Israel in any way. We personally had a very good relationship, and I understand Egypt's very serious concern about the public opinion in Egypt, which is very much inflamed against Israel. But having said that, there's a confusion about words here. You can say Israel doesn't have a normalized relationship with Israel, with Egypt, but we do have a strategic relationship with Egypt. We do, of course we do. Egypt relies on Israel, cooperates with Israel in fighting ISIS in the Sinai Peninsula, fighting Hamas, fighting the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a mortal enemy of the Egyptian government. And I don't think anything's going to change that. There'll be serious strains here. Egypt has had a very ambivalent relationship with Gaza always. It occupied the Gaza Strip between 1948 and 1967, when during the peace treaty in 1979, Menachem Begin, the prime minister, tried to offer Gaza back to Anwar Sadat. Sadat didn't want it. No way, we don't want it. And nobody's pressuring Egypt to let any Palestinians into Sinai, because that would be the easiest thing, just to move these Palestinians 100 yards across the border into a safe zone in Egypt. But Egypt won't do that, and the Biden administration won't pressure Egypt to do it. I was just reading about the New York Times about the brutal blockade of Israel over Gaza Strip. It never mentions the same blockade that the Egyptians had. Egyptians get a free pass for everything to do with Gaza. I understand that, but Israel has to have a presence along that border called the Philadelphia route, because it was through that route, totally porous. How did all these tens and tens of thousands of weapons, ammunition, explosives, RPGs get into Gaza? Not through the Israeli border, unfortunately.
Ambassador Oren, for now, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Israel came to a complete standstill this morning at 11 a.m. to remember the war dead and the victims of terrorism. At the forefront of everyone's minds, the hostages, 132 people still being held in Gaza, down at Habima Square in Tel Aviv tonight. An alternative to the traditional torch-bearing ceremony in Jerusalem is taking place, and now Balir Sadin is there for us now. Balir, what's happening?
Yes, let's take a quick look at what's happening here at the Hostages Square, actually, not Habima. Thousands of people are gathering, as we see here at the Hostages Square. There is no ceremony that's going to be held today here, maybe some speeches, but the official ceremony is actually somewhere else. The official alternative ceremony, I should say, to the ceremony that is in Mount Zion in Jerusalem, where Israel commemorates the independence, of course, for the the 76th year. And today they're going to be an alternative ceremony where the families of the hostages forum, alongside some other families of the people that were killed in October 7th, will be actually held a different ceremony, that because they are saying that there should be no lighting of the beacons. There should be actually a turning off of the beacons and turning on one beacon only for hope of the return of the hostages. That shows that there is, of course, lots of disappointment from the government. They're saying that the government shouldn't be celebrating the independence of Israel today unless or as long as there are 132 hostages in Gaza, and there should be an alternative ceremony for that. Families of the hostages will be speaking at that ceremony, as well as some other families of people that were killed on October 7th. This shows the divide inside Israel that is happening. After today, we've seen lots of protests during the visits of some of the ministers, also the Prime Minister when he was giving a speech in Jerusalem today. This shows that lots of Israelis are not satisfied at all with the government and how it's dealing with the war, and specifically how they are after 8 months still are not possible or still weren't able to say to return the hostages from Gaza. This is what's happening here in Israel as they are celebrating the 76th year of independence.
Valer, thank you very much. Valer Sladin there down in Tel Aviv with the families and supporters of the hostages. Michael Oren's with me in the studio. Particularly bitter and painful Memorial Day this year.
So every year, last night, I attended this very moving ceremony at the top of Ammunition Hill in Jerusalem for lone soldiers. I myself was a lone soldier many years ago. Today, there are something in the order of 7,000 lone soldiers serving in the Israeli forces. Many of them serve disproportionately in combat units, and they have paid for that service disproportionately in deaths and wounds. I visited an Israeli lone soldier this week who has been in intensive care since October 7th, shot 12 times, losing both his legs. And we wish a full recovery as much as possible to this wonderful young man, 22-year-old Yonah Brief. Today I was at the Ashdod Cemetery, military cemetery. I go there every year with the Malka family. This is the family of Hadass Malka, who was murdered in 2017 while guarding the entrance to the Damascus Gate. She's a border policewoman, and since then I've been proud to serve as the president of the Hadass Malka Foundation, which supports the families of border police. But what struck me today, I go every year, was the rows and rows of new graves and the families wailing over those graves of soldiers, women and men from all over Israel who have been killed since October 7th.
Yeah, terrible. Too many funerals, that's for sure. Michael, thank you very much. Stay with us. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, as Morocco's Prime Minister, he signed the normalisation deal with Israel, but now the Islamist leader has been seen embracing the Hamas chief, Ismail Haniyeh, in Doha. We'll have more on that next. Stay with us.
I-24 news channel broadcasting from Israel with dozens of correspondents throughout the world brings the truth from Israel to hundreds of millions of people in scores of countries.
Completely gunned down in their beds.
De la frontière qui sépare Israël. The state of emergency and war in Israel.
Bringing Israel's story to the world. I-24 news channels. Now on Hot.
Welcome back. Now, he signed a normalisation deal with Israel as the Prime Minister of Morocco back in 2020, but it's emerged that Saad Eddin El Othmani recently met the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Doha. It's unclear if El Othmani, who is a member of the Islamist Justice and Development Party, had authorisation for that meeting from Morocco's king. Well, let's go to Rabat and Dr. Mohamed Shtatou. He's a political commentator and senior professor at the University of Rabat. Great to see you as always, Dr. Shtatou. Thank you for joining us. And first, a bit of background, if you will, because Al Othmani was the one who actually took a pen and signed the normalisation deal with Israel back in 2020. Afterwards, though, he said he was strongly against it. He was pressured into doing it.
Well, the two prime ministers of the PJD, the Party of Justice and Development, the Othmani and Ben Kiran, who was before him, were the ones who saw the signature of the treaty with the tripartite treaty with Israel and the United States. And it was during their term of service that this happened. And obviously, all the visits that took place at the time between Rabat and Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, rather, were during the government of this party. So they accepted the signature of this treaty, and they accepted the fact that Morocco was entering into some sort of alliance with Israel. But on the other hand, they represent the Islamist Party of Morocco, so they have also a different view when it comes to Palestinian issue and when it comes to meeting with other people from the Islamist parties around the world, and mainly Hamas and people who represent Hamas.
So why then this meeting now with Haniyeh? And was this visit given the green light by the King of Morocco?
Well, this doesn't mean that there is a change in Moroccan policy towards Israel at all. Morocco continues to honor the agreement with Israel, and it continues into its alliance with Israel. We have seen recently the opening of a factory for drones, Israeli drones, and we see that there is business as usual continuing in spite of the war in Gaza. So nothing has changed, but it represents the other view within Morocco of the Islamists who support the Palestinian cause, who support Hamas, and who support what's happening in Gaza for the moment.
One thing to support the Palestinian cause, but another to support Hamas. Is there a lot of support for Hamas in Morocco?
Well, the PJD has always supported Hamas from the very beginning, and they have, even at some point in the past, they have tried to get Hamas to enter into kind of negotiations with Israel and discuss peace. This was, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago when Haniyeh came to Morocco at the time. So they are supporters of Hamas, because their background is Islamist, and it's normal that they support this organization for the moment.
Israel is under a lot of diplomatic pressure right now from its allies, the United States and Egypt, not to finish the war with Hamas, not to go into Rafah. Is there a similar feeling in Morocco? Is Morocco kind of waiting this war out and hoping that it will end very soon?
Well, Morocco really wants this war to end as soon as possible because they want to resume business with Israel and to continue, the visits, the official visits between the different officials, and to continue really the agreement, the Abraham agreements and the Abraham Accords into the future, because Morocco probably is one of the few countries where this agreement has been very successful in many ways, in the economy, in the military, in social, in tourism. There are lots of Moroccan Jews coming back to Morocco to visit their saints or to visit their friends in Morocco. So I think everybody's waiting for this war to end.
Dr. Shtatu, thank you very much. We appreciate it, as always.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
With me in the studio this hour, Dr. Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the United States. And of course, it was the previous American president, President Trump, who brokered that deal with Morocco. One of the partners of Israel under the Abraham Accords, who's now having to tread a very difficult line between public anger and this strategic relationship with Israel.
And I think that meeting has significance. I have no evidence to adduce to support this, but here's my gut feeling. The gut feeling is even the signatories of the Abraham Accords are looking at what's happening in Gaza and seeing that Hamas' position has been strengthened. It's been strengthened by the United States. It's been strengthened by the international community, basically saying everyone's opposing Israel's incursion into Rafah. That's basically saying Israel would not have leverage over Hamas to release the hostages. And even Sinwar himself, in his most recent utterances that were reprinted in the Wall Street Journal, said, listen, I have Israel where I want Israel. I have the upper hand. And so countries are basically placing their bets on both horses here, Israel and Hamas, and also they have an internal wellspring of popular support for Hamas, for the Palestinians, and against Israel. So they have to address that as well. At the end of the day, I don't think these accords are going to break, because these accords were made because there's one country in the Middle East that's standing up to the two mortal enemies of these countries. It's Shiite extremism and Sunni extremism. And if Israel wins the war, if it destroys Hamas, then not only will the peace treaties survive, they will expand significantly.
Dr. Michael Oren, thank you very much. Kibbutz Be'eri has become synonymous with the horrific attacks of October 7th. Over 100 citizens were killed and dozens were taken hostage. 7 months on, surviving members of the kibbutz have been holding a memorial for those from all walks of life who were killed trying to defend the kibbutz. Guy Azriel has this report.
Destruction, heroism, and hope. As Israel prepares to usher in its Memorial Day for the fallen, a ceremony was held in Kibbutz Be'eri to honor those who lost their lives defending the community against the brutal Hamas attack of October 7th. 101 residents of the kibbutz were butchered in the attack, and another 30 were taken hostage to Gaza, a number that could have been much higher if it wasn't for the bravery of 33 soldiers, policemen, members of the kibbutz's security squad, and even regular and brave citizens who fought back and were killed in the fierce battles of that Black Saturday.
It is impossible to explain why a person sacrifices his life for someone he doesn't even know. It's something in our values, and that's what we tried to do. First of all, you can't just comfort the families. It's not enough. But you can explain to them that thanks to the 33 fallen, we are here right now, walking around. If I could take your camera back in time to October the 7th, everything you see here was black. Black. Black with the stench of death, the smell of war.
Elchanan Kalmanson was one of those who fell in the battle. A resident of the settlement of Otniel in the West Bank, he, his brother Menachem, and nephew Itiel set out to save the lives of people they never knew.
It gives a lot of power, a lot of meaning of a shared fate, shared destiny, of the great desire to restore security here. Both the ruins we see and restoring the closeness between the people. And that is what we are talking about. We also cry a lot together and dream together about the future.
If we are not together, then we will be hanged next to each other. The saying that we must be worthy of the fallen. This is what is happening here right now. The way politics looks right now, feeding on hatred and division. The Hebrew word for political party comes from the word for division, and we must not be that.
As the ceremony concludes, Elchanan's family and some of those he saved in the kibbutz gathered to commemorate him in the house where he was killed.
It's very hard to be here because everyone called my father a hero, but I'm feeling empty without him.
My brother was a man of doing and building, and of creation and progress, so mourning him actually pushes me to this place and connects me with him. We don't have many other choices either. That's the truth. And if you want to move forward, then you have to choose life. Not far from here, we were part in the destruction of a shelter where a terrorist had fortified himself, and unfortunately, we saw that shelter was rebuilt. We should not be building shelters. We need to make sure that we no longer need shelters. This war must not end before we accomplish that.
It's very hard to be here, but to see all the people that he saved, it's giving you a hope to live your life again, because it's very hard all the life without my father. It's you need to start a new life now. But when you see the people here, it's giving you a hope that maybe it's gonna be okay one day.
7 months after the massacre, the echoes of the shells from Gaza thunder through the kibbutz, a sad reminder of a war that is still far from over.
Since last night, we can hear the war raging in the camps of the central Gaza Strip, and it's right in front of us. In such a war, a situation, I would not recommend families with children to return here.
On Independence Day, Menachem Kalmanson and Itiel Zohar will be awarded the special 2024 Israel Prize for Civilian Heroism, Israel's highest civil honor, for outstanding bravery, on October 7th.
Well, as is the tradition here in Israel, the nation will move over the next hour from the somber Memorial Day to the festivities of Independence Day, or Yom HaAtzmaut. And this year, Memorial Day is ending with the lighting of candles in the kibbutzim, which were devastating on October 7th. We'll stay with us for special coverage right here on I24 News. And I will leave you now in the hands of our Kalev Ben-David.
Marciano, the father of one of the most wondrously heroic women soldiers, where she was murdered in Kfar Aza. And Ibrahim Harouba, may his memory be blessed, fought heroically for the sake of those soldiers. We will remember them. And the next torch will be lit for one of those mobile shelters in the western Negev. Anyone who was on the roads at 6:29 in the morning, they hurried to look for one of the dozens of those shelters scattered along those roads. Hundreds of people hid in the shelters, not knowing that squads of terrorists were rushing straight to take advantage of their helplessness. During the long hours in the shelters, people who had not known each other before protected each other, reassured, treated. There were unimaginable heroic stories discovered there. This will be lit by Rachel Jarafi and her cousin Jarafi, who in one of those shelters, they lost Shoam and Shenhav and Doan and his son Liel. We will remember them forever. The next will be lit in Nativ Ha'asara. At the beginning of the attack on Israel, the Hamas terrorists infiltrated not only from air but on ground as well, and they started a murderous massacre. We're talking about people from the generations of the founders and others. They were all murdered there. And this torch will be lit by Yoel Berger, who lost Marina Almagor, Norit Berger, and his son-in-law. He himself was injured under fire. They are third generation. The father of Daniel, a member of the alert squad, they left their homes in order to defend the Moshav. They both fell in this terrible battle. They are standing together to light it. Let us remember them. The next torch will be lit where in the cemetery of so many of those cars that were left abandoned there after the massacre, more than 1,600 burned and cars that had been shot at. So Sdot Negev, the regional authority, have discussed and showed us this horrific memory and testimony to it. So many were killed in cold blood as they ran from their cars. The rescue services and the firefighters who were also murdered along this path. It was illogical, but they tried to literally stampede into this area in order to save whoever they could. Neil Korotsky were lighted, and Leon Ben-Oroya, whose many colleagues and comrades in arms and others fell. And the father of Dor Krider, who was murdered in Kibbutz Be'eri by the terrorists. Alongside them are standing members of the alert squad, parents, bereaved families, all standing together. We will remember them. This memorial journey continues to Ofakim. They'd celebrated in the hundreds of synagogues in the town at 7 in the morning. The terrorists broke into the town armed with hundreds of grenades, explosives, and ammunition. The residents of Ofakim left everything and they went to guard and protect their town. It was a desperate battle for their home. So in memory of those who fell in Ofakim, and it will be lit by a detective who fought in that battle heroically and lost his life, Moshe Ochayon, and the brother of and father who went out to fight there until they also were killed in the gunfire there. 33 children from Ofakim are joining them today, and the two friends beside them celebrated Bar and Bat Mitzvah during this year of mourning. We will remember them. And the next one is of the alert squads in Miftachim, will be lit in the Moshav Miftachim. They received a call from the Moshav next door to them. Gila Vital and Gil Nachmias all went out to join the alert squad in the next kibbutz next door to them. With barely any ammunition, they heroically fought for many hours and saved all the residents there, but paid with their own lives. So those who died from Yesha and Miftachim while defending their homes will be lit by Oli Maman, one of the members of the alert squad, and Yeli Asulin, who was responsible for security in that Moshav, and they both fell so heroically. We will remember them. And the nest will be lit in Shlomit. In this young locality on the Egyptian border also woke up to the sounds of the sirens, and they heard calls for help from the various Moshavim near them, Prigan and others. No one hesitated for a moment. They left their homes, their wives and their children, and they ran to help in a very difficult battle. They managed to actually curb the progress of the terrorists until they withdrew. But so many fell that day. This torch will be killed beside their homes by 4 of the wives: Reuven's wife, Dana Cohen, Avihad's wife, Nechama Bibi, Uriel's wife, and Nehora Swede, Bechor's wife. We will remember them. And the journey now reaches Nir Oz. Nir Oz was a little slice of paradise, a really cohesed and wonderful area with the birds tweeting in the background. Nearly a quarter of their population, 117 men, women, and children, were murdered or taken hostage cruelly. So many of them are still held hostage in the Gaza Strip. We are all awaiting their return. This torch will be kindled by Amit Simantov Ahava, whose brother and her sister-in-law and her nieces and nephews were murdered. 3 generations that were there and are no longer there. We will remember them. And the last torch will be kindled in memory of where the Nova party took place in Re'im. During the night between Friday and Saturday, people were dancing in the 3 parties in Western Negev. They wanted to celebrate love and freedom in the most beautiful way possible. And the sirens stopped that music very abruptly. They helped each other to try and flee from the areas of danger, but they didn't realize that people were coming towards them. The hundreds of armed and dangerous terrorists with murder in their eyes were running towards them. All they wanted to do was celebrate and dance. All those who died will be led by Hadass Shemail, whose sister was a single mother of 3 children, and Ron Tzalfati's wife celebrated life with her partner and so many friends. They were murdered there at the party. We will remember them.
Welcome to this special broadcast on I-24 News. I'm Caleb Ben David. We are now in the closing moments of Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day. And in just minutes from now, we will welcome in the country's 76th Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day. Now, this has been a particularly somber Memorial Day, a day of mourning, especially for all the fallen on and since October 7th. And usually this is an abrupt transition to the celebration of Independence Day. But this Independence Day is also different. This one will be observed in a much more sober way, with the country, of course, still at war in Gaza and along the northern border, starting with the opening ceremony on Jerusalem's Mount Herzl, which we will bring you live in its entirety. This year, though, there will not be a live audience present, and there will not be the traditional closing fireworks, and the proceedings will have a special emphasis on those acting in the defense of Israel. Okay, it's all.
כשאמות משהו ממני, משהו ממני ימות בך, ימות בך. כשתמות משהו ממך בי, משהו ממך בי ימות איתך, ימות איתך. כי כולנו, כן כולנו, כולנו רקמה אנושית.
We are of one.
ואם אחד מאיתנו הולך מעימנו, משהו מת בנו ומשהו נשאר איתו. כשאמות משהו ממני, משהו ממני ימות בך, ימות בך.
אחינו כל בית ישראל הנתונים בצרה ובשביה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה, המקום ירחם עליהם ויוציאם.
We're listening now to a special musical rendition of a special traditional Jewish prayer for the redemption of those held hostage, something that is particularly worthy. And of course, we see the empty chairs there representing the hostages at Mount Herzl. And of course, keep in mind, all the chairs are in a sense empty because this is being performed without a live audience. We're just now half a minute away from the beginning of the transition from Memorial Day to Independence Day.
The flag of Israel is being hoisted not only on Mount Herzl, but also in the south and north. The Israeli flag will be hoisted to the top of its mast.
המשמר יחטיף את נשקו. אך תאבשק. המשמר ידגל את נשקו. דגל.
Shoulder arms.
המשמר יחטיף את נשקו. אך תאבשק.
The guard will shoulder arms.
המורה לתנ"ך בגבעתי, המורה ללשון מודיעין, השכן מלמעלה קבלן עבודות, אבל חודש כבר במילואים. עורכת הדין היא קמב"צית, עושה משמרות באוגדה. אחי האיש הייטק בכיר, עכשיו הוא צלף על גגות ברצועה. מנהל את הסניף הקשוחה של הבנק, היא סמג"ד ביהודה ושומרון. דורון הוא בעל חנות צעצועים, עכשיו הוא מ"פ בשריון. והמדי שלנו כפרה, שלרוב מזמר בקיסריה, הוא לוחם הנדסה, מתאושש בגבורה, אחרי שנפצע בלב עזה. ונכון כולם נראים רגילים, אבל אנחנו עם של גיבוריה, בכל אחד תמיד מסתתר חייל, מוכן להציל את העולם. החיים או באמצע משחק כדורגל, כולם יעזבו את הכל בשנייה אם יקרא להם הדגל. פה זה לא יקום מקביל, לא מציאות של מוות, זה הסיפור שלנו, עם ישראל, זה הסיפור שלנו. ארץ שנאהב, היא לנו אם האב, ארץ של העם, איזה עולם, ארץ בה נולדנו, ארץ בה נחיה, יהיה מה שיהיה, אנחנו עם של גיבוריה, יהיה מה שיהיה, בכל אחד תמיד נסתתר חייל, יהיה מה שיהיה.
תודה לאנשי ונשות המילואים, למתנדבות ולמתנדבים.
All right, we'll come back to the opening in just a minute. I'll just note that Daphne El-Kayam was one of the singers, and the first song was herself a hostage there. And with me is Ambassador Danny Ayalon, who was Israel ambassador to the United States. And Danny, a challenge for the organizers this year, because a poll came out today showing that some 60% of the public wanted more restrained celebrations this year. 30% said there shouldn't be Independence Day celebrations this year.
Yeah, well, that would really be a hard thing to kind of square the circle here, because very many people are mourning. And we've had
Hold on, Danny, because the Prime Minister's taped address is now playing.
Psalms. With that spirit I will win, and with that spirit we are stronger than ever. But the desire to eradicate us is still there. And we saw that on the 7th of October. This is not a normal Independence Day. The war was forced upon us, and it is still going strong. So many of our sons and daughters are still being held as hostages, and the families are suffering horrifically. We have to bring them home, those who have died and those who are still alive. The people in the north are still displaced from their homes. And the best and the creme de la creme of our soldiers are still fighting. So many of the families are bereaved families, and other soldiers are fighting during their rehabilitation to recover fully, and I wish them full recovery. When I met many of them and many of the families of those who were killed, they say that our heroes never fell in vain. They were not injured in vain. Continued till the end, until those monsters of Hamas have been totally eradicated. And yes, I promise you, we will do that. It's not a usual Independence Day, but it's an opportunity to understand our independence, to be a free people in our country, to defend ourselves with our own power for the sake of posterity. Never again. And we will repeat that. Never again. And we will do it together, only together. And just as our soldiers are fighting together, shoulder to shoulder, in the tent, in the airs, and in the sea, a whole country has mobilized. What a wonderful generation we have. Those are the heroes of this victory, and they will light with a bright light our entire country, and they are writing the wonderful story of our people. This is a true miracle. This is in honor of those Israelis who run towards danger in order to save everyone. The commanders, girls and boys, the policemen, policewomen, the people from all the armed forces. They have been added to those who have defended and protected us all, the Bedouin, the Cherkessim, the Drusim, the Christians, the Jews. We are brethren, we are brothers. And for all the reservists who want to fight till the victory, and the families on the home front, to the girls and the boys on the front line, for the rescue forces and the military and we're talking about the volunteers and the medical services, the firefighters, for our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, all those who have together stood on one front line with their heads held high in pride for our beautiful, beloved country. As lions, we will fight to the glory of the state of Israel. And now the Speaker of the Knesset, Mir Ohana, will address us. It is the first time that the Prime Minister has addressed us at the Evening of Independence ceremony. And this is recorded, and there is no audience because of the fear of protests and demonstrations. And now, as the dark has fallen, it fell on the longest day that Israel has ever known, not only because the numbers of those fallen and wounded, but also because of the atrocities that were documented and the helplessness that continued for far too long. But despite that, when we do have a country, the pain of the bereaved families for those lives that were cut short and the yearning for them, them are cutting through the hearts of all our people. We owe you and your cherished ones our lives and our independence. This evening, especially this evening, I am turning to all of you, our hostages, the boys and the girls, the men and women. The 76th Independence Day is not complete without your presence. Israel was not there on the 7th of October with its might and its clout as we expected it to be, but it has been acting every single day to bring you home to your families. All the servicemen and women are fighting tirelessly, burning the midnight oil to do so, to bring you home. In all the synagogues in Israel and in the diaspora, we are praying for your peace and your return. We will not despair. We will not cease until you come home. Do not lose your hope. And you will be returned to Zion. And there will be tremendous joy. And misery and sadness will disappear. My dear friends, my brothers from the north and from the Negev, so many of you are displaced. It is your private home, but it is our home as well. And yes, still there will be the breeze there, and all those kibbutzim localities, you will return to your glory. And the laughter of children will be heard once again. We commemorated on our Memorial Day to the Holocaust what happened during those horrific years. That generation and so many generations before that, they had no home. They were a people without a homeland. They dreamt and prayed next year in Jerusalem, but that prayer was not answered for 2,000 years. But we were fortunate enough to be born into a world with a homeland for the Jews, and we are marking its independence now, today, 76th year, and we thank the Lord for its existence. I am now speaking to you from Mount Herzl without an audience. The last time that happened, there was an epidemic threatening us, just as now an epidemic is threatening us, polarity and extremism. It happened before the 7th of October, brothers against brothers, and we believe then that when the war broke out, we would unite and we would somehow suppress that virus, and people rose to the occasion and fought. And they united and fought, reservists, civilians, volunteers, men and women, shoulder to shoulder, the Israelis from everywhere, of every single kind. We returned to each other. However, this journey is still going on because the enemy hopes that the fight between us, the disputes will continue, because they hope to hit us in every theater and arena possible. And if we do not unite, it could, God forbid, happen. That is what happened in the Second Temple. And what was the price? 2,000 years of exile, Holocaust. This is possible because in our annals, we can write a new chapter, whatever happened in the annals of our history. But it is hard to do, but it is possible. It is in our hands. Be'eri, and Ofir's father, as he introduced him, said, Shai Biton Ochyun, who died in Gaza. He said, it's okay not to believe, but you should never stop loving. And Salman Khabaka also, he said we must continue to unite and be cohesed, because only together will we be able to have the upper hand and see that victory. And others wrote to their families as a will and testament, if we must die, I hope it will be on the defense of other people and our state. And Jerusalem, we have those guards, and I hope that I will one day be one of those guards in order to be worthy of that. The people of Israel have to unite and be together, shout less, listen more, even to our political rivals, because all of them have proven that they are willing to sacrifice themselves for the sake of Jewish democratic Israel. Jerusalem and Tel Aviv will have to meet halfway at Sha'ar Hagai. These are days of our destiny for our state and for our people. We have learned over the last year that our threatened people, that unity is not a luxury. It is air to breathe and the water. It is imperative for us. And all the hues and views, it is enough to write one word in the next chapter. If we unite together, it'll be the most glorious chapter of our history. And the children of our children will read that and say, this was the best hour of the Israelis. One of the soldiers who fell in Gaza, his mother, Michal, asked the public to repeat after her the three healing, strengthening words that elevate our souls more so than any other word that I know. She said, Am Israel Chai, the people of Israel live. He is now asked to light that torch in honor of those who are serving in the IDF and in all the security services and forces, those who are fighting in the battlefields in order to bring security back and to bring our hostages home, in honor of our brethren, the brothers and sisters from the diaspora who mobilize to donate, contribute, and stand alongside us in our just war. But while they are grappling with waves of anti-Semitism unprecedented, truly, since the times of the Holocaust, and for the glory of the State of Israel. The guard will present arms at ease. In the 76th year of our independence, we have suffered the worst attack ever, and such an attack of hatred against us, believing that we do not actually deserve a home of our own. But the spirit of people, thousands of people, Jews and Arabs, they came and mobilized without even receiving that command. They did everything in uniform and in civilian clothes. They stood in those bitter times since the 7th of October, Simchat Torah, and they stood together and fought and worked together. And in the light of the heroism, the minister who is responsible, the minister of transport, decided to have a different torch lighting ceremony, 12 for heroism, for them, heroes and heroines that would kindle those torches cause of independence together. We are saluting tonight those heroes and heroines who live amidst us for what has been created and exists here in our state, for the spirit that is beating within our hearts that no one can beat. We will prevail. And that is for the sake of the glory of the state of Israel. Please could those now come who will light and kindle those lights. The alert squad members, they were the first line of protection for so many long hours, and they fought against thousands of terrorists. They fought for their localities and for the sake of the state of Israel. And those alert squad members were the embodiment of true heroism. We're talking about agriculturists, people who have, and he, unfortunately, after he left his house that morning, he was actually killed, but he continued fighting with the other alert squad members until they fell. And now he intends to continue fighting. And from Kibbutz Alumim, there were only 12 people who could actually help them. There was one soldier who told them, but despite the inferiority of numbers, they managed to stabilize a line that they would be able to protect and defend. Ari Avichai, he's a member of that squad in Samaria. He immediately after he heard what was going on, he joined the fighting with only revolvers. Avichai fought at the Ma'on and Re'im Junction, and he was miraculously saved. In Baal Lieberman, the security officer near her kibbutz decided to act with determination immediately. She left the kibbutz locked with armed people on the actual fence, and she deployed people so that when they arrived near the terrorists, they were ready and waiting for them. The people in the Western Negev, they will be kindling that torch. I, Tal Levit, the son of Tzipi and Boaz Levit from Metula, are kindling this torch in honor of the northern border of the state of Israel. For the sake of family and community, I, Barak Shalom, the son of Nathanael and Sarid, are lighting this torch in memory of those who were murdered and in recognition of the combatants who came to help us and our beloved heroes and heroines who left us alone. We left alone at home when we went out to fight and defend them. We are kindling this torch in honor of the wounded in their hearts, souls, and in their mental conditions as well. And I and Baal Lieberman, the daughter of Ofer Lieberman, are lighting this candle in honor of the hope that a day will come and we will not be needed anymore, to the glory of the state of Israel. The alert squads. Under this horrific fire on the 7th of October, the heroism of all those who fought in order to curb that invasion. The head of the GSS, he fought in the Western Negev, and they managed to rescue hundreds of families from Kfar Aza under heavy fire while losing combatants along the way. Ayin is representing those from the GSS. Gimel is serving as a commander in the Mossad. She has recruited many combatants and people who have been involved in the defense of the state of Israel, and she is representing the people from the Mossad. And Yud, they fought in the Western Negev and saved so many civilians. She is representing those from the prison services. Together, they are the iron fist of the state of Israel. And Shavit from the paratroopers, he lost He lost his brother Ariel. He received those terrible tidings while fighting. He chose to stay and fight. If Captain Shavit represents the soldiers of the army, and thanks to the various commands that he received, hundreds of police came out to try and curb the invasion of hundreds of terrorists towards those towns in the south, and he was even wounded. The Commissioner Amir represents the policemen and women of the State of Israel, and they are truly the source of the fortitude and the resilience of the police force of the State of Israel. I, Gimel, the daughter of my dear parents and a mother of my proud children, are kindling this torch in honor of the men and women of the shadows from the Mossad who are fighting the covert war of our state for the sake of the defense of the State of Israel. I, Yud, the son of Amos, may his memory be blessed, and my mother, may her life, may she live long, in honor of the combatants and in honor of this right to wear the same uniform as was worn in Mitzada. I, the son of my wonderful parents, are kindling this torch in honor of my brothers and sisters from the GSS, in honor of the covert combatants behind the scenes who have given their lives because they are the shield that is not seen behind the scenes. I, Amir, the son of Nisim, who has passed away, and Shoshana. I am a grandson from a bereaved family who lost the father in the War of Independence. I am lighting it in honor of those heroes and heroines who sacrificed their lives and curbed the invasion into the center of the State of Israel. I, Shavit, the son of Galit and Waldman, am kindling this torch in honor of the IDF and in honor of my hero, my brother who fell, and who are defending the State of Israel, even if they had to sacrifice themselves, and to the glory of the State of Israel. And in parallel to this cruel invasion, there was another that was coordinated, and therefore Israel was attacked by the world outside. This was also coordinated, and campaigns that were spreading and disseminating hatred everywhere. They were the whole wish to actually fight for our name and reputation in the State of Israel, in our image. There were hundreds who actually mobilized to come and tell Israel's story. Ella Kainan told the story and turned her channels into a dissemination tool to millions of people who were watching it, and created hundreds of thousands influencers in the social networks who tell and the story which reverberates everywhere. He is from Golan, and he's also one of the veterans of the IDF. Yosef Haddad is speaking. He says that he's a proud Israeli, but he is also an Arab. He calls himself, and he spreads the word to the entire world proudly. And he has loved the Bible, and for many years he is making all the story of the State of Israel accessible to millions around the world on behalf of the citizens of the State of Israel. I, Yosef Haddad, the son of Tuma and Violet Haddad, are kindling this torch in honor of the Israeli partnership, which is the true story of our beloved country. All the lies will not succeed in hiding this miracle that together Jews and Arabs, secular and religious, have built together. I am proud to be Jewish. I'm proud to be an Israeli. I'm proud to be an Arab, and I will never stop fighting for this country. I, Ella, the daughter of Yitzhak and Sarah, are kindling this torch for all those who are fighting for our story, for our truth in Israel and abroad, who are devoting every moment of the day to create the RPR. We can change things.
To be counted among the friends of Israel, in honor of those who are like me, not Israeli, not Jewish, but still boldly stand to be with this nation and to love this people. May the true light and the true glory of Israel remain forever. The children, the people of Israel live.
Am Israel Chai.
Am Israel Chai.
Medinat Israel.
And for the glory of the state of Israel. This is what we call the Hasbara front line. Public diplomacy. The mobilization of the people, the Jewish people, has been accompanying us since our inception, but it has been moving us more than ever. The Jews from the diaspora have been raising funds and standing in solidarity and marching in the sake of the state of Israel. We would like here to turn to all the Jewish people. We are with you. And the torches of the people of the diaspora will be lit by Deborah Silverstein from Chicago during a time when her life is being under threats of people who wish to hurt her. And Rabbi David Meyer, who has been working in Jewish education for over 30 years and educating for Jewish pride and educating against anti-Semitism and fighting against superstition.
Deborah Silverstein, daughter of my dear parents, Marvin, Zichrono Livracha, and Eva Laskov, may she live and be well, light this torch in honor of the divine call, Ayeka, where are you? And the Jewish answer, Hineni, here I am. And in honor of our pride and our Jewish heritage and our fearless global fight against anti-Semitism.
And I, Rabbi David Meyer, son of my dear parents, Benjamin Zichrono Livracha, and Tibadel L'chaim Aruchim Maisie, light this torch in honor of our small nation that brings, especially at this time of darkness, so much light to the world. And in honor of the privilege of standing here tonight, representing Jewish educators from across the diaspora, Yerushalayim Habenuya.
Uletiferet Medinat Yisrael.
And to the glory of the state of Israel. The volunteers from the rescue services, the civilians, and the combat officers, they helped so many of them, awarding resilience, emotional resilience to all. So the paramedic, Oshrit, and her friends established a field hospital under fire and saved dozens of wounded people. Oshrit, he represents 32,000 volunteers. Dr. Tamar Schlesinger, a social worker who volunteers in Ihud Hatzalah, she was the one who received that call from the two children whose parents had been murdered and whose little daughter Abigail, who had been kidnapped and hid in a cupboard. She represents all the workers from Ihud Hatzalah. Nurit Iran Cohen worked with her volunteering friends in order to try and find the corpses and the injured from the various localities. She's representing all the employees of Zaka and all the volunteers, and from the Netivot firefighting services for hours under fire he enabled the entrance of the combatants and rescued those who had been hurt. So we're talking about those who have accompanied them, Ichud Hatzalah, Zaka, MDA, social workers. They will now kindle that torch. I, Iran Nurit Cohen, the daughter of Herlov Chaim Tzvi Cohen of blessed memory, and Nira Cohen Jacobson, may she live a long life. She was born in Copenhagen, Denmark, are lighting this torch in honor of that effort to try and save wherever possible and honor and show dignity for those who cannot. And Minani, I also kindled this torch in honor of the right to always be the first responders. I, Tamar Schlesinger, the daughter Aviv and Nurit and Weiss, are kindling this torch in honor of an open heart and an attentive ear. And I, Oshrit, the daughter of Chaim and Ilanit Haddad, are kindling this torch in honor of the sanctity of life and the glory of the State of Israel. The rescue services.
On
the 14th of April was a historic night. Israel was being attacked with 350 ballistic and ballistic missiles, UAVs, cruise missiles, and others. Had they actually managed to hit their targets, the damage would have been unimaginable. But with partners from the Middle East and the world, they managed to actually intercept 99% of that fire that was actually targeted towards them. Amongst those, we must never forget the Israeli military industries who have played such an important role in this as well. The people who managed to actually intercept that unprecedented attack, even hundreds and thousands of kilometers from the State of Israel. One of them was, of course, the Arrow missile, and heads of the people who had actually had that invention and its manufacture. We needed a collection and analysis of thousands of data. The person who had actually led that development of this control is Colonel in Reserves Shaul Levy from Elbit, one of the pioneers in Israel's aviation defense. If we're talking about the various lower defense system, was from the Iron Dome and others that, of course, have already written down hundreds of thousands of successes. One of the founders of this and the other security aviation services whose names we cannot mention here. So I, Penny Jungman, born in Israel, the son of Holocaust survivors of blessed memory, are kindling a torch in honor of the life, the good life that we live, that we have sworn to defend in any way possible. I, Shaul Level, the son of Asir Zion, Chacham Avraham Levi, and Simcha Levi, of blessed memory, I left Haleb in Syria, Aleppo in Syria, for the human factor, the combatants who use and have used with absolute excellence all these sophisticated arms. I, the son of Rivka, a Holocaust survivor from Romanian Amiel, are kindling this torch in honor of the people of development, engineering, and all our partners in this long, extended journey from a dream to fulfillment, to reality, and the glory of the State of Israel. This is our shield. And the Israeli systems have been working on the 7th of October and, of course, after that, in an awe-inspiring manner, under fire, heavy fire, when many were in terrible danger, they managed to actually give help to the thousands of wounded and time after time saved lives in all the hospitals. If the tens of thousands of doctors and nurses are looking after those who have been so badly injured. Anat Israeli Bendo, she is leading the orthopedic rehabilitation in Tel Shomer, working with the most seriously wounded and helping them to find the strength from within them to grapple with the difficulties of their rehabilitation. The head of the center in Beersheba, he led the first responding treatment of over 670 wounded who reached the hospital, and the treatment afterwards as well. He continues accompanying them nowadays as well. He and Dan, who is the beloved GP in the Negev, and he continues treating them. Gaia Tuberi, who served in the forces, she was wounded while treating the wounded, and she is still in rehabilitation. On the 7th of October, Dr. Dikla Matzliach from Barzilai Hospital in Ashkelon worked on so many of the wounded in the various centers that had been wounded so severely on the 7th of October. And after that, she went to Jenin and in Khan Yunis, there treating all the soldiers who needed her help. So here we're talking about hundreds who have volunteered to look after the most complex of cases, and the wounded from the various security services, civilians, and the IDF, Barzilai, Hadassah, Morocco, all of them. I, Yosef Yitzchak, the son of Rabbi Shimon and Ehrlich, am kindling this torch in honor of the injured, those who have been disabled and wounded seriously, but we will always be here for you. I, Dan, the son of Liz and Rabbi Shimon Schmaltzkus, may they live a long life pleasantly, are kindling this torch in honor of the medical teams in the hospitals who are on the front line of medical treatment in routine and in times of emergency, and in honor of my colleagues, the GPs in the Negev, that you are the resurrection of the State of Israel. I, Anati Israeli Bendo, the daughter of Rochele and Avraham, am kindling this torch in honor of the right to save lives, rehabilitate lives, and live a life of true vocation and mission, in honor of the medical teams and the various rehabilitative services. The daughter of Moshe and Florence, am kindling this torch in honor of the medical teams, the civilian and the military ones, that turned the State of Israel to one that has the competitive edge in their ability to save people under fire in battle. I am lighting this torch in honor of all the medical forces in the field, the heroic service that they are awarding to all the soldiers and the wounded, and for the glory of the State of Israel. Medicine and rehabilitation. There was not a home in Israel that did not experience over the last months the pain and the chagrin for all the hostages and the peace of the soldiers. There were some of those who managed to elevate their spirits with music and deeds. Every leader, one of our most influential, talented singers in the State of Israel, decided to strengthen the spirit of the State of Israel. They are representing the artists from Israel and the technical teams who mobilized in order to truly cheer everyone up and elevate their spirits and sing everywhere. Unfortunately, in the cemeteries as well. Ezra Yachin, he mobilized to Lehi, and next month he will be 96. He is the oldest reservist in the IDF. He moves from one unit to another, trying to talk to them about heroism. He had fought against trauma himself in fighting, and he is representing so many who were actually fighting in the field and supporting the fight behind the scenes. Chaim Uliel, son of Sderot, who has been creating music in Sderot with other people from the south of the country. He was evacuated from Sderot and only recently returned from a determined decision to stand up, and with whatever they have suffered, they would return culture and voice and singing to the south of Israel. Iris Chaim from Zdenicham is the mother of Yotam Chaim, who was taken hostage and killed by mistake by fire as a hostage in Gaza. She comes and strengthens them and invites them to their homes, all the IDF soldiers. She wants to strengthen the spirit of our people and is asking everyone for unity. And now, I, Ivri, the son of Oscar Leader of blessed memory and Dalia Leader, may live a long life, am kindling this torch with tremendous humility, but with pride, on behalf of all the artists in the State of Israel who are performing to all the hues and diverse groups of our society at this dark time. This light is for you, on behalf of you, who will let it happen that with this light, a new light will be re-illuminated in our free, beloved country, and hope will be seen once again. But more important than anything, that the hostages come home to their homes. I, Ezra Benitz, the son of Yitzchak and Emily Yachin, are kindling this torch in honor of the spirit of heroism that passes from generation to generation, from the Maccabim generation to those now. I was honored to be part of that heroic fight and proud to serve till this very day as a loyal combatant in the IDF. Netzach Israel lo yeshaker. The eternity of Israel will not lie. I lighting this candle in honor of the transparent people whose voices are not heard, those who have suffered from shell shock and trauma. I am lighting it in honor for those who volunteered and to leave everything and fight for this country. I, the son of Sderot, of that southern town, in honor of the creation that elevates our spirits above all pain, in honor of the South, whose spirit will never be beaten. I, Iris Chaim, the mother of Tuval, Yotam of blessed memory. I'm kindling this torch in honor of our Yotam, in honor of the spirit of the people that will never break, in honor of the ability to believe in the goodness of our people and the glory of the State of Israel. This was in honor of the spirit of the people. These terrible days of fighting and the confusion and helplessness, there were endless stories of heroism that were told from the Western Negev and all over Israel, who immediately tried and rescue other people while risking their own lives. Rabbi Yitzhak Shofar from Ofakim came out with only a revolver in order to try and defend the people. And Edwin from the south immediately went out. Yosef's family, some of them were taken hostage, but he came out immediately to try and save anyone he could. When the attack started against the actual party, they immediately came out and with under fire, they saved so many of the civilians. And instead of just survivors, they became rescuers. And he saved under fire hundreds of survivors from the party, and so many owe him their lives. Dan Alush and Gal Alush and Yuval Ohana, the daughter of Adi Ohana of blessed memory, and the IEC employees risked their own lives in order to help the residents of the area and lost their lives. I, Daniel Sharabi, the son of Sharon and Tamar, are kindling this torch also on behalf of my brother who was fighting under those horrific conditions, and in honor of those who came back and those who have not come back, and in honor of those who lent a helping hand at times of terror. I, Yosef ben Mohsan Vadeba, I am kindling this torch in honor of the Jews and the Arabs. They should live together in this state in peace. I, Rami Davidian, from the Patish Moshav, the son of Sarah Nazariah of blessed memory, are kindling this torch in honor of the brothers and our sisters who we did not save, that I did not succeed in saving. There is no day that passes, there is no day or night that I do not think of you, that my heart is not with you. There is not a day that my soul is not accompanying you. I, Rabbi Shachar, the son of Sasson and Hannah Mutzchak, are kindling this torch in honor of my friends, the residents of Ofakim, a town of heroes, and for the sake of our people, the lions of Israel. And the eternity of Israel will not lie, and to the glory of the state of Israel. These are the rescuers. Already in the first days of the fighting, Israeli society mobilized completely, cohesively, to try and support each other. The mamos brought beautifully cooked food and organized themselves in various headquarters in order to help the survivors, the families of the hostages, the displaced people, and created facilities in order to cook and bake for them. Bat-Sheva Nadon, Basma Hino, who is a widow from Julis, the Druze village. These three mamas have been acting endlessly in order to send home-cooked food to the soldiers on the front. And the reservist headquarters also gives supplies the needs for the thousands of reservists who really have been in need of that special touch, and the voluntary organization who have been helping the displaced people, the farmers and the hostage families, soldiers and their families, in order to meet the needs of endless needs that have popped up in the field. Jacobson, who has been working endlessly in order to save women from situations of violence, and they turned their pharmaceutical company that they own into a